Hi there, I'm Haruka. So I was hearing recently that the people in charge of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics have pretty much agreed internally that it's not happening. The scary thing is just too much to account for, and it'd be best to not have it. But as of making this video, they're still planning on it happening. Just in 2021 instead of 2020. Anyway, this got me thinking of a certain manga that really heavily relies on the 2020 Tokyo Olympics for its premise. So, as a side note, I actually wrote a script for a video that will never be made. It was one of the first things I wrote when I decided to actually start making videos, and it was basically this big critique on average sports anime. I didn't like the way I wrote it because I didn't feel like I had enough passion for the subject. The anime I was talking about, Iwakakuru, I don't hate it, but I spent so long trying to rip it apart that it just seemed like I was taking something down for no real reason. But then I reread this manga and realized that the best way to really talk about what I don't like about the sports genre is to highlight a story that really shines a contrast on the genre. And that manga is Saotome Senshu Hitakakusu. After rereading this manga, I firmly believe that it is the most well-written sports manga of all time. Haikyuu? Trash. Hajime no Ippo? Too old. Slam Dunk? More like lame duck. Keijo? You know what? I'll allow it, you can stay. But for real, I just love what writer Naoki Mizuguchi does with pretty much everything here. Saotome Senshu subverts normal sports anime tropes without fully abandoning them, and maintains a sense of realism without abandoning the fact that this is an anime and needs to have some coincidences in order for things to move along. By rejecting these tropes, it makes the story less about what fancy things are done within the sport, and makes you much more interested in the characters we're following through this story. Boxing isn't the plot here, it's a facilitator to help provide signposts for the plot to move along through. There's also some fun bits in there about idol culture, but I'll get to that much later. For now, let me define what I mean when I talk about a basic sports anime. I obviously love sports, just look at my channel's name. So I've watched quite a bit of sports anime, mostly cute girls play sports stuff, but also some other random sports anime. This isn't every time, but it seems to be the basic formula. Our main character joins the sports club. They don't know how to play. Why did they join? I have no clue, but they're here now and need to go through the whole training montage teaching them what the sport even is. But somehow they're absolutely amazing because of some random unrelated skill they have that makes them an instant prodigy at the sport. Even better, sometimes the main character is actually already amazing at the sport, but doesn't want to play anymore because of the incident. Anyway, we get some player archetypes like the mentor or teammate who is the best in Japan, usually a senpai who's somehow amazing but is going to this middling school because reasons. Then there's this big bad who's a flashy star to the public and somehow has legions of fans despite being a high schooler in a very unpopular sport, but away from the crowds they're a cold-hearted bitch. And scattered throughout are opponents who somehow all have been rivals of some main character for years, like since they were children. Everyone has known everybody since they were 2 months old or something, and eventually after they're defeated they join in and help their childhood rival overcome the next big bad. Then there's this weird way in which sports are handled in general in sports anime. First of all, there's always this big deal made about wanting to inspire kids to pick up the sport, especially if it's a show with a girls team. Instead of telling a good story, it just wants to be like, hey, this sport is fun, everyone should play. It's not a bad message, but after seeing this every time, it gets to be a bit preachy and annoying. And in terms of the plot in general, these stories can never really seem to find a way to balance both the action of the sport and the character beats that actually make you care about the story. A lot of the more shonen manga and anime sacrifice character building off the field for more opportunities for hype on the field. For others, this is okay, but for me, this is always something that takes me out of it. And maybe they can build the characters well enough, but for some reason, those sort of writers never write about the sport itself well enough, relying on over-the-top and unrealistic action. As I said, this isn't every anime, but it's just a trend that I've seen and something that I think Saotome Senshu does well to break. The first few pages of a manga are incredibly important. They pretty much tell you what this entire thing will be about. And I don't mean main characters, I mean vibes. Saotome Senshu, a boxing manga, doesn't start with some boxing. It starts with Yae Saotome asking out Satoru Tsukishima. Yae is a featherweight champion boxer, Satoru is a light flyweight who's never won a match, and while Satoru is clearly interested in Yae romantically, he feels that he can't accept her request because he would ruin this idol status that Yae has within this small town they live in. But their coach quickly tells them to put public perception aside and follow their hearts, even making Satoru Yae's official cornerman and trainer. Alright, so we just plowed through the first chapter of the manga real quick, so let me just explain to you who these two boxers are. The first thing you need to know is that they are both dumb jocks and act like it. Both are incredibly bad with social settings outside the context of boxing. In fact, most of the boxing characters are that way, and it's incredibly adorable. Anyway, Yae Saotome is the all-time best girl. As I said, she's a featherweight boxer and is treated as an idol by the town and school because she's really the only cool and interesting thing to have ever come from there. But despite all of this positive attention, Yae holds this deep trauma within her about growing up the way she is. Growing up, people always thought she was a boy, and now that she's a boxing idol, she's still only seen as an athlete. all Yae wants is to be seen and treated like a normal girl. She's not some killing machine, she's a shy high school girl who is actually really smart and is even in the advanced classes at school. But because of her celebrity, she's forced to maintain this very specific public image of the cool, emotionless boxer. On the other side, there's Satoru Tsukishima, who is possibly a contender for best boy of all time, but Sakura Azusagawa will always have my heart. Anyway, Satoru is just a terrible boxer in the light flyweight division. He's small, he's slow, he just did not win the genetic lottery to be a good boxer. But what he doesn't have in physicality, he makes up for it in his boxing IQ. He is amazing when it comes to understanding the technical side of boxing, and the strategy and training he gives Yae is so valuable from a sports point of view. The problem is that boxing is the only thing he really cares about. In some cases it helps, in other cases it doesn't, and in one very specific case he attempts to hold back an erection by listing off the names of world heavyweight champions. And as the story progresses, we get some more fun characters that I really want to talk about. There's Mito Kono, the student manager of the boxing club. She doesn't really care about sports, but after finding out about this adorable jock couple's secret, she immediately wants to meddle in their affairs. She also happens to be the grandniece of the principal, who is the one person who is most heavily enforcing Yae's idol image. Her role is to be sort of a comedic relief and a perverted balance to all the really emotionally innocent jocks that show up in the story. Also, she might be gay. What's this? A Genki girl with abs? In this economy? That's right, Maho Wakano is the new woman of your dreams. She is a childhood friend, but not of any of the main cast. She's actually Satoru's sister's childhood friend. Still, she's known Satoru since they were kids. She was a champion in high school and is now a college girl working towards the Olympics along the same track that Yae is on. She's mostly used to give a bit of power scaling to the boxers presented in the story, and as a reason for the boxing club senpais to get extremely horny. Then we've got Mizuki Satsukawa, also known as Milky, who is just another dumb jock. She is the closest thing we get to a true rival for Yae, as she beat Yae the year before when Yae had only been boxing for 2 months. She's a former karate champ and uses a bit of that skill set in her boxing. I'll talk about that later. Mostly she's just another example of a boxer who isn't really good at handling things outside the context of competition, but she really gets humanized in moments outside the ring. By the time a national training camp comes around, she and Yae have become friends, and Milky even gets really close to Mito, the manager. Side note, Milky goes to an all-girls school and doesn't like boys, so... And this is a stretch to add into a recap since they show up really late, but I want to also mention the Hanami sisters. There's the younger sister, Kanako, who is a future member of the boxing club and isn't the reason I shoved this bit in. This is Kagome, the absolute goddess of war, battle mommy, queen of destruction. I would pledge my life to her if she wasn't a cop. But unfortunately, in the words of Vince Staples, I don't fuck with the police. The plot is honestly fairly standard. She fights in a bunch of tournaments and goes on a couple of training camps. It's about the content of those chapters, which are less about it being a tournament to be the best and more as a way to get Yae and Satoru into different situations that allow them to develop their relationship. Most of the story isn't about her wanting to finally beat a certain boxer, it's about her training because that's what a boxer does. And that training heavily involves Satoru, which allows the development of cute situations for Satoru to show Yae how much he cares about her. There's also a lot of good slice of life bits, with Mito taking the couple out shopping, hanging out in Kyoto with Milky, and some nice bits with Yae getting along with the nerdy girls from her advanced class. Even her little brother gets in on the fun. Wait, that sounded weird. In the end, it gets a bit rushed and slightly falls into the tired tropes after chapter 90, but there's still a lot of interesting payoff from themes that were developed throughout, with Satoru working to get his first win and the relationship being exposed to the school in town. To find out how that works out, just read the dang thing. So let's get into how exactly it differs from the traditional sports tropes I mentioned. The thing that needs to get out of the way right at the start is that Saotome Senshu is, first and foremost, a love story. And I think that because of the central story being about Yae and Satoru's relationship, it frees up the sports side of the story to be much more realistic and independent. Yae isn't winning to be the best, she's winning for Satoru with Satoru. It's not about the next tournament, it's about the next cute moment between these two lovable jocks. As for the actual stated tropes, Yae is revealed to have only been boxing for a little over a year, but there's nothing about her past in basketball that actually helps her with boxing other than the fact that she's tall. Besides, she still has a good idea of what to do in the ring now that she's already been trained up well enough over the past year before the manga starts. The archetypes aren't really here as there's really no mentor senpai. There's a coach, but most of the knowledge that Yae gets comes from Satoru, who we all know is a very small boy who cannot actually punch anybody that good. The actual senpais are just a couple of dudes who are mostly annoyed by the new attention the club's gotten, and are busy trying to get Wakano to step on them. The opponents are almost all nameless except for Milky, who isn't a childhood rival, but just someone who she has recent history with. There are a lot of characters who coincidentally have ties to Satoru, but that's to be expected in a manga, and they don't really come up in actual tournaments, just outside the ring. Also, the manga isn't preachy about its sport. There's some small moments where you see that there's a bit of a struggle being a boxing club or being an athlete, but it's not overt or explicit. It's just seen as normal, which honestly makes the message a bit more powerful than outright saying it. Finally, the action isn't cartoony. Honestly, I don't watch boxing, but I enjoy watching documentaries, and I've played a bit of EA Fight Night, and as far as I could tell, the choreography, if that's what you can call it in a manga, is done in a way that allows it to be kinetic while still keeping it grounded in reality. Usually the action is shredded by pauses, talking, and standing around, but Saotome Senshu forgoes that sort of action style, and the moves that are used are realistic moves in boxing. Punches and bunches, breaking a guard, even the special moves aren't personalized finishing moves, they're just the right technique at the right time. We see Milky using a vertical punch that seems unstoppable, but it's just that it can slip through a boxer's guard easier than a punch and is really rare because it's a karate move. And Yai's counter is just a counter, nothing special. The whole story works because of how relatable each of the characters are made to feel. Yae may be a completely different person from you physically, but you can empathize with her very human desire to be finally seen for who she truly is. Satoru's passion for boxing and willingness to bring that passion to everyone he meets makes him the kind of person you want to root for in the ring. And their love story isn't perfect. They each have flaws and times where they don't have good communication with each other, but that just makes them even more adorable together. Without context, their training sessions look like a normal thing, but in context, this is the cutest thing ever. And other characters get their own due, with Mito's abandoned rich kid story, Milky's struggle with becoming an adult, and Wakano trying to overcome a certain level of imposter syndrome. Because the focus isn't on what happens in the ring, we are allowed to become more attached to the characters going in the ring. Then I want to talk about Saotome's take on idols real quick. I'm American, I do not understand idol culture. I am not an idol, please never refer to me as such, I'm just an entertainer. But Saotome Senshu deals very consciously with this idea of purity being necessary for someone in the public eye. The principal of the school and his sister, the mayor of the town, basically exploit Yae's image to promote themselves. This means they feel that they have control over Yae's image, and they kinda do. Yae has to do a lot of random things she isn't interested in just because they say she needs to as the idol of the town. And this pure image means that she and Satoru have to hide their relationship in fear that Satoru will be run out of town. There's also this weird and interesting underlying theme about this certain perception that athletes can't have romantic feelings. They aren't allowed. And that's something I'd really love to dive into, but not for this particular manga. So I'm going to use the time intended for talking about some really deep sociological discussions by just pointing out all the abs. I really like muscly anime girls, I don't know why, maybe I just feel like I need to be protected and they make me feel safe. I hope to one day have the back muscles of Kagome-sama. Alright, to close this out, Saotome Senshu Hitakakusu is a revolutionary manga when it comes to the sports genre. It breaks traditional tropes, patching it up with rom-com elements that complement everything into a story that could be easily understood and enjoyed by someone who isn't even into sports. Unfortunately, the real-life 2020 Olympics will not be the one that was dreamed up by this manga. I mean, just look at the social distancing there. And even more unfortunately, Saotome will never get an anime adaptation due to its time-sensitive nature. But despite that, it's still an amazing manga on its own, and I believe it's the best sports manga ever written. Also, Milky and her OG Jordans are gay, and she's totally dating Mito at the end of the manga. It's totally canon, she has her number. Thank you for watching. I had to actually record this twice because I felt like the first time I recorded this I didn't have enough energy. And I feel like I did a good job this time, a better job this time. If you want to read the manga, I don't have a sponsorship with like Bookwalker or something, but you could check the description. I'm gonna try to find a link to somewhere you can read this legally, and I'm gonna try streaming soon. So you should also go to the description to find my Twitch, which I think the first one that I'm gonna play, the first game I'm gonna play is gonna be EA Fight Night because I guess I talked about boxing here, so might as well have my first stream after this video be a boxing stream. There should be a video up there and a subscribe orb down there. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'm just gonna keep making videos. I might start making 2 videos in a week. We're gonna see what happens there. But streaming, check that out.